like we're Lord of the Rings and we're getting ready to go to Mordor type of thing, and we're going to lay the map out in front of us. What is it that Thor, okay, I'm a nerd, okay, I'm completely a nerd when it comes to Lord of the Rings, but one of the very first things that happens before they take off, okay, this is in The Hobbit, one of the very first things that happens before they take off is Gandalf says, show me your map. Because your map will let me know how you plan to grow personally. And now, if I'm looking at your map, I can go, oh, Kyle, there's a better way to get from point A to point B than what you have in mind. Does that make sense? Or, yeah, that's never going to work, what you're thinking. So what I want to do is I want to provide you guys with a map of what this thing, and it's even sequential. And the key thing here, you can't skip steps. You can try, but you'll find that it won't work. You'll wonder why things aren't working. Well, just skip step 2. Yes, I skipped step 2. Well, that's why it's not working. But Clay, you said step 5 would be awesome. Well, if you don't skip steps, it will be awesome. Does that make sense? So there's going to be these steps along the way. While growing up in school, we have teachers in each of our subjects that present us with information with the expectation that in a short amount of time, we'll be able to repeat that information back to them. If we could repeat back well enough, we would pass. If not, we fail. It was easy to pick up a mindset of success and failure. And failure is bad because you'd come home and go, hey, I made an F. And what would happen? Bad. Consequences, criticism, all that kind of stuff. I don't like feeling this way, so evidently failing is bad. But how many of you guys know most of life and most of learning is overcoming failure? But we don't learn that in school. The focus in school is all success. Make A's, make A's, make A's. And then we launch out into life. I don't know how to make A's. I'm screwing up making A's. And so we interpret failure with bad. And so we begin to feel bad about ourselves. And so if you're like me, I try to do everything I can, Kyle, to orchestrate my life to minimize failure. Oh, there could be failure down that path, so I'm not going to go down it. Oh, failure could be there. And so I just don't go down that path because there could be failure. And because of the way I thought about failure, it caused me to have a very negative emotion toward it, which again, launching out into life, made me very handicapped because I didn't know how to deal with failure. Moving on here. Unfortunately, this common system doesn't prepare us very well for the life after school. Love this. The Harvard Business Review here. 10% of the population has a learning mindset. Also, you may want to write down, there's a book called The Learning Mindset. Research done. 10% of the population has a learning mindset, which means they will actively, personally pursue learning. The other 90% will only learn if you force them. Now again, come to a coach and a consultant, that's tough because I know that only 10% of the population, 10% of the people that I talk to are actually going to implement the things I'm talking about. The others will only implement what I'm talking about if I force them. If there are great rewards, okay, or if there are great consequences. Does that make sense? And also, the American Society of Training and Development, 90% of what is learned in training is lost by the time you get back to your job. So this goes to what you were talking about a moment ago. Learning isn't an event. Learning is a process, and you have to stick with it. But again, in school, the way I learned to learn was an event. And usually that event, I'm sure nobody in here was that way, but I was this way. Usually that event was the night before the test, when I would try to cram everything in, you know? And even though the teacher would tell me you need to study each day and everything, I do best when you do it right before. That's where I work best, under pressure. Guys, that is not true. Nobody works best under pressure, but we have taught ourselves that that's how we work because we procrastinate. And so we do everything the last minute. Does that make sense? So, somehow 90% of us get through all of these years of school and didn't ever learn how to learn. And so all of a sudden somebody like me comes along and says, hey, let's do this thing called personal development. You're going, oh, this will be so neat. I'm so excited about personal development. This will be great. But we haven't still learned how to learn. And so we end up being like Mike Tyson here. I love his phrase here. Everybody's got a plan until you get hit. You get into the ring and everything's going to go good and you've done all your visualization and your coach has gotten you ready and you get in there and next thing you know you get popped in the face and it's like, oh, this is real. How am I going to respond to that? Has anybody ever been hit in the face before? Nobody raise your hand, please. Okay. Okay. Please, everyone. Oh, yes, I have. Guys, I remember one time when I was in grade school, a coach of ours decided it'd be a lot of fun to do boxing. You know? And so we're putting on gloves. There's no headgear or anything, and we're boxing. And I mean, I got in the ring with this one kid that had me by about 4 or 5 inches, had a reach on me, and he came around with a right hook, nailed me right in the face. Holy cow, I couldn't get those gloves off fast enough. I'm done. This is over. I don't ever want to have that feeling again in my life. I thought boxing would be a lot of fun. I had a plan until I got hit, and then everything, just the wheels came off of it. Okay? So this can happen. I want to lose weight. Okay, that's great until you have to deny yourself the first Twinkie. You know? Like, oh, my life. This is so hard. You know, you deny yourself and then you're telling everybody throughout the day, I couldn't eat the Twinkie. You know, you're just kind of you're dying all over the place type of thing. You know? Or you know, I'm gonna exercise, and you exercise the first day, and then the second day you wake up and you go, I can't get out of bed, you know. I knew I shouldn't have ever done this. This can't be good for me, and all that kind of stuff. We just kind of go crazy. So we start out with good intentions, but we haven't learned how to learn. And so we get hit with resistance, we get hit with a struggle, we get hit with difficulty, we get hit with a boundary, and we don't know how to overcome it because it should have been, I study this, I spit it back out, I make an A. But that just doesn't work in life. It's great for school, okay, but it doesn't really work that well in life. Most of the time, once we get hit with struggles, difficulty, pain, or suffering, we click into survival mode and just do the best we know how. Anybody know what I'm talking about? I'm just doing the best I can. And you guys, that's wonderful, okay? That's wonderful. But you need to know that that is called survival mode. So anytime you hear that come up in your head, or you hear it come out of your mouth, or you hear somebody else say it to you, that is an immediate indication that somebody, either you or somebody else, is living in survival mode. They are coping the best they can. I'm just doing the best I can. Just doing the best I can. All we need to do with the person that is doing the best they can is expand the best they can. Does that make sense? You need to go from here to there. And then the very same situation will not provide anywhere near the amount of pressure because you have expanded the best you can. Does that make sense? I mean, this was one thing for me. It was just always, I'm doing the best I can, I'm doing the best I can. But the best I can never did improve, never did change. So, how do we move from this circle into that circle? We have to go through process events. Thinking about struggle, thinking about difficulty, a specific way that allows us to grow, to expand our capacity. Here's a phrase for you. Expand your capacity to process greater complexity. Expand your capacity to process greater complexity. When you guys think of your life out in the future, 3, 5, 10, 15 years, do you see your life becoming simpler and simpler? Or do you see your life becoming more and more complex? How many say more and more complex? Yeah. I mean, there's just more things added to life, more responsibilities. You know, 10 years ago, what was on your plate? You know, get to class on time. You know, make sure you don't hack off your boyfriend type of thing. There's just very little on your plate. I was just talking to my daughter last night at dinner, and what was it she was saying? She is a volleyball player, and they're doing a volleyball camp right now from 8 until noon working with junior high kids, and she's part of that. She comes home by 12:30 and is done the rest of the afternoon, just completely drained. And like I said earlier, just dying all over, like, oh, these kids, I'm so tired, blah, blah, blah. And so I made the comment last night, limited capacity, you know? So the whole idea behind personal development is to increase your capacity to process greater and greater amounts of complexity. If we're not careful, what will happen is life, you can't do anything about this. Life is going to get bigger. But if your capacity is here, you will feel overwhelmed, overdone, overstressed, over this, over that, over dash anything.
I need a new marker.
You notice that? I could use a new marker.
I'm gonna grab the water.
Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Has anybody ever been in this situation before where you just feel over something? And in that time of feeling over, I am overwhelmed, I am overworked, I am overstressed, overpressured, the natural thinking is that the solution to the problem is to make things smaller. Does that make sense? I just need this to stop just for a little bit. I just need a break. I just need things to slow down. And that's one way to think about it. But how often does life get smaller for you? It doesn't. And so that way of thinking, even though it's very common, that way of thinking is not helpful. Okay? And usually leads to even more stress. And so rather than wanting life to get easier, you need to be thinking, Julie, about you need to get better. How about this? Here's another phrase. Your life gets better when you do. Your life gets better when you do. When you increase your capacity to process greater complexity. Yeah, just hunkering down, doing the best you can, weathering the storms. Anybody know what I'm talking about when I say that? You got a struggle, you got a situation, I'm just going to get through it. Just going to hunker down and wait for it to go. And then all of a sudden, the pressure goes. The pressure alleviates. Fantastic. I knew that's all I needed to do was just hunker down and weather the storm. Okay, that's fine. But what happens when the next storm, the next struggle comes? I'm going to hold on to my limited capacity and just hunker down and wait for it to pass. We can teach ourselves that way really quick, right? Because we do it, it works, we have set up a belief system. That's the way it works. I'm not saying it doesn't work, but I'm just saying that's not the best way to go about it. Okay? But what we're actually going to do is increase our capacity. We are going to embrace difficulty. And when I say embrace difficulty, let me be sure to qualify that.